Hey guys, welcome to the RC.
The show's not about robbing the cradle because this week, unlike the past 2 weeks, we are not talking about nostalgia. We're going to be talking about discernment and how to figure out what you're doing with your life. Rachel, how are you today?
I am good.
What are you drinking?
I am drinking Mucho Mango Fruit Punch today.
From
So
Arizona
red.
Iced Tea. Please sponsor us. I don't think Arizona Iced Tea has ever done a podcast sponsorship.
I don't think they have. But
should do us.
considering how much we drink Mucho Mango, they should consider it.
If you don't know what Mucho Mango is, just because you may not,
delicious.
it's I've only actually seen it in Southern California. It is, if you know the Arizona Iced Tea, it is the same exact company, but it's a mango drink. That's literally all there is to it.
It's got different flavors, but the one that we started with was this mango. Mucho Mango is like, it was a mango drink. It was like an orange mango or something. And
It's heavenly.
then we found out there were other flavors. So now, rather than get these, they have these really tall cans like the Arizona Iced Tea, and like Arnold Palmer have those big, tall like cans. We don't get those anymore. We get like full like gallons of them, like these clear gallons, and we drink it more than water, which is probably
incredible.
not healthy.
It's really not. But today, it's not about being healthy. Today's about learning how to spiritually grow, choose your path in life, all the good things. So if you're looking to for your 5 steps to financial stability, this is not the episode. Go watch Gordon Ramsay.
Gordon
Ramsay. This is not that show. This is
it
where
Gordon Ramsay? Gordon Ramsay's the chef.
Yeah, it's Dave Ramsay. That's
It's
what I
Dave
thought
Ramsay.
it was. You got me second guessing which Ramsay brother. They're not brothers.
They're
I don't
not
even think
related.
they're related. You know, his is related to Gordon Ramsay.
Who?
Nope, that's Bobby Flay. Never
All
mind.
right. We have been watching way too many cooking shows the last few weeks.
We've been our current one is
Diners, drive-ins, and dives.
and Dungeons and Dragons. That's the full name with the with the beautiful man Guy Fieri. He
He's
is an
awesome.
incredible human being.
We love Guy.
But today's not also a show about Guy Fieri, as we quickly get sidetracked in the first 3 minutes of the show. If you haven't clicked off yet, I guarantee, looking at the click rate, it's going to be like 3 minutes and 30 seconds in. Everyone's off. Today we're going to be talking about discernment. What does it mean to figure it out? How do you figure it out? How do you know if you want to be a priest? Then after you've determined you definitely don't want to, how do you determine which girl to find? That's what the topic for today's conversation. If you have any questions, make sure to put them in the comments below. If you have any topics you want us to talk about, send us emails, DM us on Instagram. It's all just the RC Catholics. Now, Rachel,
Yes.
how has your discernment life been? Did you ever discern the nunnery?
I think I discerned it for a hot, 2 minutes.
For the time you were required to by the Catholic Church.
Yeah. No, because I know some great sisters, and I've known some nuns. So it was never like something that I was like, oh yeah, like I could never do that. But I basically knew from a very, very, very early age. I just knew that wasn't kind of where I was called to be. I don't know why. A lot of people think it's my personality. I was surrounded by Catholics my whole life, who kind of told me I did not have the personality of a sister, and I was kind of okay with that.
Okay, that's actually something I'm going to talk about is people often see that personality type and they say, you have the personality of a priest. I was told that every time I went to a weekday mass. They're like, oh, when are you going to join the seminary? Because you're going to weekday mass, which apparently that's the only requirement to go to weekday mass. I'm turning down this light. This is super bright. I am so sorry. That's why it looks like hell. There we go. Hopefully that looks better.
I'm shrouded in darkness.
That was here. I'll put it towards you. Better? There.
Light.
The sunshine has been brought. No, but behind the scenes baseball here, guys. We have a light here. We have another light here. Then we have the window, but we don't worry about that. If you're listening on Spotify, thank you. But also, you have no idea what we're talking about. This is really boring for you. Watch on YouTube. It's way more different. But when you do certain things and you're like a good young Catholic, people immediately are like, go become a religious. We need more religious. Especially because of the priest shortage we had back in the early 2000s, mid 2000s. Everybody is like, oh, if you're a good holy Catholic, you need to become religious. Like, it was a requirement. So that's interesting that you brought up that point, that was like something that people were like, oh, you have the temperament for this.
Yeah, I think that's kind of always been, when you think about it, that's kind of how a lot of people approach it, is that, oh, you have to have a very certain personality. And I think it's actually really challenging, because I think within, I don't know, I've never obviously stayed in a nunnery. I've never stayed with a group of sisters. But I think it's really interesting to think about the idea that like they're not all the same personality. Otherwise, I don't think that it could work. I think a nunnery is required to have different personalities.
Elaborate.
Because it's like in any job you do. In a team, in a group, you need different personalities because some people are just going to be better at some things than others, and some people are just naturally going to having like a style of doing things, or some people will naturally lean towards being a leader. You're going to need leaders in a nunnery. A nunnery can't just be all people who are just like, yes, I just do what everyone else says, and I just like, you need different. And if everyone was the same, they wouldn't get along, because similar personalities I've also been told clash a lot. So it's like, even though people are like, oh yeah, you two would totally get along, you're the same person, you meet that person and you drive each other nuts. You cannot get along because similar personalities tend to clash a lot. And so I don't think there's one personality that fits, obviously, in like as a priest or as a nun. There are certain skills you need as a priest. You have to have some ability of public speaking, but those are all things you can learn. And sometimes it's something that you're not good at, and a part of your discernment is God saying, for a priest, maybe like he's like, you don't have great public speaking. Maybe they get really nervous, they don't like speaking in public, and he goes, that is a cross you're gonna bear, and that is something that you're gonna grow through. Because from that, you're going to become the priest that I've created you to be, and that, you will have an impact on the world despite this. Like, it's not a hindrance. So I think that basing your discernment off of a personality trait isn't true. Because I also know some married people who are like, easily, there's a guy I know who could have been a priest. He's great in public speaking. He is so charismatic. You wish. No, Connor, you are very charismatic, and you are very comfortable public speaking. But this was just someone in particular who ended up discerning out of seminary. I think he was only there a year. I went to college with him, and he discerned out, and he's going to be a teacher now.
Oh, nice.
And I think those actually kind of like line up, I think, really well, because they both kind of use similar skills, and I think both appeal to him.
Almost the same skill set, literally
similar, heavily
similar.
The
same skill set. That's really. I think literally what you're saying is the exact same point that I was going to make with, if you know Father Cassidy Stinson from Twitter fame, I forget his Twitter handle, but I actually have known him since his first year of seminary. He's an incredible guy. But when you meet him in person, he's I don't want to say shy, he's very meek. Is the best way to put it. Like, that guy exudes holiness. Like, you're in the same room as him, you're like, I want to both have a beer and be blessed by you at the same time. Like, it's incredible. But he gives some absolutely, and some of the other priests that I know, like, I knew a guy who was a National Guard guy, like a hardcore, military guy, but he was one of the quietest guys you've ever met. Father Miguel Melendez, incredible, just a great giving human being. But his personality, feels that same with Father Stinson. But then you go to people like one of my really good priest friends, Father Nick Redmond. This guy was a former. He wanted to be a soccer referee, a professional soccer referee, and he was a Spanish teacher. This guy is loud. He is big. He is vibrant. He just brings people in. But they're both priests, and they were priests, seminarians at the same time, right? And so think about it. They're all together, and like you're saying, completely goes the point. Everyone can be, doesn't matter your personality, doesn't matter that. It doesn't matter your like method of here's how I am Catholic. It's, is God calling you to that? And I think that's something that people often overlook, correct me if I'm wrong, is they make it muddled about like, what are your inclinations, what are you doing, as opposed to just, are you wanting to do it? And is God pulling you towards that? Because that's really what matters.
I think, playing a little bit of devil's advocate, I think it's not just, I mean, there is a part of personality involved with it.
Of course.
But that tends almost towards a sense of like spiritual personality than it does like social personality.
So you mean like charisms?
Yeah, like charisms, I guess. I don't really know. What I was thinking was like, oh, if you're a priest, you have to be someone who has these. It's almost like that one test where it's like, what are your spiritual gifts?
Austin spirituality test.
Yeah,
we should do that on a video. We should do a video where we take it.
We could do a video.
Ooh, we go through it until you take the Austin
like and comment below if you want us to do this test.
It goes through all of the different spiritual charisms and says, what are you good at? Like, I'm pretty sure when I took it, hospitality was like at the bottom of the list.
Yeah, it probably was. I was thinking about that.
Sounds
and I was like,
about
I was
right.
like, I don't want to be mean, but also
It makes perfect
not,
sense.
he's not wrong.
Whereas like management for you, I'm pretty sure was like top of the list.
It was high. I think I took it about 2 years ago for a theology class I was in.
I was with you.
And
It's
I think
really
it was
interesting.
in my top 5. I don't think it was my top 3 actually. I think it was in my top 5 though. So either 4 or 5.
We'll have to take it and see how it's changed.
Yeah.
Somebody else actually asked us. So this is actually somebody asked us to talk about this, and someone else asked us to talk about our spiritual journey. So we may talk about that another time. With discernment, what do you think is a good way for someone to start discerning? Like,
Oh gosh.
super practical, like, because I'm talking about the overall discernment,
See,
not like
I
discerning
hate-
priests that are.
I hate that
Go.
question. I hate that question so much personally.
Really?
I hate it. And I get a lot of grief from Catholics about like specifically like theology teachers and everybody who's like, why? Like, don't you I'm like, yes, I want to discern, but I don't think that there is a foolproof plan or set of steps for everybody. My discernment process has been very, very different than like 90% of the people I know. A lot of the people I know have had the the book version, it follows all the steps, you
Yeah.
go through all the chapters. All right. Mine has been very, very different. I never had, and I always say this, I'm like, I hate that people think that discernment is waiting until God reveals it to you, like, bam, there it is, in like a vision or like whatever. Like, most people don't have that experience. Most people go through discernment in just a very like normal kind of just basic way. Like, I have gone, and discernment isn't just relationships either, but like discernment for me has always been about trusting myself and trusting that if God's giving me this kind of this feeling or this idea, that I can trust it, and I can trust that he's not going to want something bad to happen to me. So I'll discerning colleges, I spent a year at St. Mary's University. Call out to all my awesome friends, Nicole 2.0. There's 2 of them, Kristen, Debbie, all of them. They were all awesome because they all had these great stories of how they decided to go to St. Mary's. And mine was kind of, I kind of just chose between 2 and trusted that was the right choice to make.
Oh, yeah.
And in a year, I decided, you know what? It was a good choice, but it's not the choice anymore, and I have to make a new choice. And both times I prayed about it, and you'd be surprised how often people are like, oh, just pray about it. Like, if you just pray harder, God will tell you. And that's not true. Like, I had to just kind of trust.
God isn't come down wearing the school colors of where you're supposed to go to, singing the chants.
No, but that would make life easier.
What a weird. That sounds like something from like The Hangover 9. Like,
oh gosh,
it sounds like something that would happen in a comedy.
Yeah. The greatest new comedy idea.
What?
But
Discernment.
Discernment
is a comedy though.
Discernment is comedy.
Like, God laughs at your plans. He's like, "What do you want to do? Guess what? Because we both went to a college, and
Yes.
we both have really like interesting college choosing stories that we're not going to tell. That's for another episode because those are long.
They're
stories.
not exciting.
I think they're hysterical, but they both really are grounded in we really made a jump and are like, okay, God, I'm gonna go to this one, and then God was like, you've learned what you needed to learn. Now go to this place, and now you're meeting each other.
Yeah,
exactly. And I think that is really what discernment really. If you had to come up with a foolproof, what are the things that are always true? Stay out of sin, and pray.
And even then, like,
that's all. Really, what was that? I think a raccoon just smacked against our window. I think a raccoon full out just ran, or like a squirrel.
I think that was a squirrel. I don't think that was
ran
a
and slammed against our like sliding glass door. Oh my god,
that's terrifying.
Excuse me, my sliding glass door. Excuse me, the studio apartment.
The
studio. Sorry, not
studios.
studio apartment. The studio, professional recording studio, where we record.
Yeah, we'll get this
all
out.
of our things. But I think that's really what it comes down to is. Are you praying? Are you staying in communication with God? And then are you letting him answer you? And then are you staying out of sin?
Well, yeah. And it's like, yeah, obviously you've got to be like good. Like, God isn't just like, sometimes God will strike you down if you're being stupid. But
yes. Literally.
Discernment, I think the other thing is I don't like the idea that there's, despite the fact that I write it a lot, and I think I did early on, and especially in high school, I kind of ascribed to this idea that like there was one path and there was one choice, and I needed to make sure I followed the right one, or my life wouldn't turn out the way God intended. I would mess up. I was so scared of that, and that's it's paralyzing to have that kind of a fear about discernment. I don't think you should be afraid of discernment. I honestly think it should be.
Why are people scared of discernment? Why do they get that paralysis by analysis?
I don't know. I think it's because, for me anyways, it was the fear of making the wrong choice.
Yeah, I think it's the same.
It's the fear of making a mistake, because the last thing any of us want to do as Catholics is mess up and make a mistake and, screw up and do something wrong. We want to do everything right.
Which is good. It's a good holy desire.
And if you want to follow God, like, obviously discernment is, at its core, is about following God. And I think if you're trying to follow God and you're so scared that if you make one wrong move, suddenly you're not following God, I think that can be kind of paralyzing too.
Yeah. I think the best way that I've ever heard it explained is with discernment. God is like a GPS. If you take the turn that may not be right, he can still bring you to the destination. Remember, the destination is heaven. Yeah. So as long as, at the end of the day, it's, are you going to get to heaven? And it's not like, oh, if I had gone to Ave Maria University instead of Steubenville, I could be happier. It doesn't matter. You'll have a different life.
It'll be different.
It'll be different. You'll have a different life. But at that point, after you've made the decision, you're never scared of it. So why are you scared beforehand?
He'll still get you to the main checkpoint.
Exactly.
It might be more roundabout. It might be weirder. It might just be different.
Yeah.
But I don't think that it's a bad thing that people, like, you can discern that something is not the right thing for you. There have been people who are like 6 years into seminary and are like,
bye.
So I discerned, and yeah, that seems a little late. And everyone's like, oh, well, you already committed 6 years of your life to this. Okay, well, like, there are a lot of things that you can learn from being in the seminary for 6 years. I know a lot of guys who did the 4 years, the first 4 years before you get,
and then they discern,
out.
Keyword discern. Like, everybody talks about it like, oh no, he discerned out. Like, it's this hushed like scandal. It's like, no, he is following the will of God. He understands what it is now.
God had a different plan for him.
Not better. We're not going to go into that.
It's not better for him. There was something that God had that was better for him or for her, because there have been women who start and they do like the first vows and then they're like, this
She's
isn't
not
right.
saying seminary. She means in the religious order.
Yeah, I said, and the women when they do their first vows.
Okay, I thought you were saying women who go to seminary, and I was like, not in this church.
No, not in.
I'm so sorry. I clipped the audio really bad.
That is a conversation you adore, is angrily talking about women priests. But we're not going to talk about that because I don't want to get him started. But no, I think that discernment it's different for every person. I hate the idea that discernment has to be the same for everybody. But I mean, there are certain things that you can do. So I guess we could talk about, what would you say are like the things that you can do to kind of at least jumpstart the process or kind of get going.
Stay to sin and pray, and then when you pray, let God freaking answer. I see so many people who pray and then they say, God, give this to me, and God's like, like Father, Son, Holy Spirit. It's like, let God respond. I think that when you are praying for discernment, you are asking God to give you an answer, but you're not really waiting to listen for an answer. That's why, like, my go-to adoration holy hour, and I developed this after years and years of professional holy hourisms at 2 a.m. The best way to do it, and psychologically, this is the best way to do it. According to psychology, right? Mm-hmm. Fact check me on some of these numbers here if you want to. The brain takes 15 to 20 minutes to set itself to a new state of mind.
Yes.
That's why you should always show up to Mass 15 minutes early.
Yes.
So,
if you ask my mom, it should be 30 minutes, but yes.
Yeah. I mean, pray for your rosaries. All good. Nothing ever hurts. Mm-hmm. So for your first holy hour, this is how you should pray a holy hour, the discernment way.
Yeah.
For the first 15 to 20 minutes, don't say a thing. Sit there. Literally just sit there. If your mind starts to wander, be like, no, I'm going to think of nothing. And quiet your mind.
You have so much more discipline than I do about this.
Dude, it's hard. It's super hard. But once you get it, it's super fruitful, right? Because then you're able to say, I'm going to quiet my mind so I can actually listen to God. And then after that, don't start asking him for stuff. After that, for about 30 minutes, thank him. Or for about 15, 30 minutes, thank him. Don't ask. Thanks. So you sit in quiet and then you thank him for everything. Even if you thanked him before, even if it's something as small as, the sky is nice today, God. I really like the shade of blue of the slightly gray sky today.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then for another 15 minutes, ask him. Ask him, okay, here's what I'm looking at. Here's what's worrying me. And don't ask him, like, give me direction. Just say, here's what I'm worrying. Lay them at his feet. And for the last 15 minutes, let him respond. That's all it takes. I think that's the way to do it well. No, I probably did spike the audio. I definitely spiked the audio. But like, that's what you need to do. You need to sit. You need to let your mind get in the place where you're ready for the conversation. You need to thank him. You needed to say, here, I'm giving you all my problems. Take them. Give me peace, please. And then listen to what he's going to say in response. Mm-hmm. He's going to say something. It may not be verbal. It could just be a little, I feel better now. Yeah, that could be all he's responding. But he will respond. I think that's the biggest thing in discernment is prayer. And then on the other side of that, don't let yourself get scared of any answer. Don't let yourself get so scrupulous where you're like, if I make the one wrong decision, like we already talked about, then my life is over. It's not. I think it was Jose Maria Escriva who said, you think you can screw with God's plans? How powerful do you think you are? Come on, man. So I think that's really, if I had to give like, here's the steps, pray either like somehow, just pray. And then don't worry. Pray, hope, and don't worry. Padre Pio. That's my thing for discernment. Pray, hope, and don't worry.
That's a good one.
I think that's
a good set.
I think that's all it is.
Yeah.
I think people overcomplicate it. But then if we're getting really specific, and here's my question to you now.
Yeah.
Is if we're getting specific, right? And you've already discerned, okay, look, I really don't feel like the Lord is calling me to this. And we'll talk about at the end of this how discernment never stops. Because that's the one biggest thing. So stay tuned for that because you don't want to miss it. Once you've decided, obviously, you're like, okay, I feel like God isn't really calling me to this, so I'm going to start dating. How do you start discerning that side of it? Because that's where no one really talks about is how do you discern, I want to date this guy? Or is it like, don't discern it, just do it?
So I've always had this idea that dating is, in the first few months, not crazy discernment. I think everyone's like, oh, when you date, sometimes you just start dating someone because you have feelings. And that's okay. Like, it doesn't need to be a massive, am I called to marry this person right away? I think that there's a lot of value in discernment. I think everyone's kind of always discerning at some point. Or, constantly. I think you're discerning because you're always wondering, what am I supposed to do? You're almost always thinking about the future. But I don't think that people need to seriously discern as intensely as they think. I think sometimes you can just experience something. Mm-hmm. You can experience just dating someone for, 6 months or
for
something. For
fun. You can have fun and not make it all about.
It doesn't need to be this massive courtship thing. Everyone's obviously going to do their own thing. And I think that that's fine. But I think that there needs to be the option that it's not this big, every second of every day I need to be discerning. You obviously are going to make choices. But you kind of just need to trust that for the most part, God's got you. Yeah. I mean, I'm trusting you. We didn't intend this, actually. Connor picked me up today, and we accidentally... For those of you who can't see us, we have the same shirt on.
Which get the shirt at faithfulhabit.com.
So this is a shirt
Link
from...
in the description.
This is a shirt from Connor's t-shirt company, actually. And it's super soft and super fun. It says, I'm trusting you in English.
You didn't even know we were going to talk about discernment, and we're wearing shirts that say I'm trusting you.
It says it, so I'm working with it. What's the
Hebrew?
This is Hebrew.
It's like what Jesus
said.
So
it says I'm trusting you in English and Hebrew. It's my favorite shirt because I love the phrase I'm trusting you. Holds a lot of value for me in my personal life. But you can check them out. It's on Faithful Habit. They're really nice shirts. We didn't mean to match today.
But it's so fortuitous.
It is fortuitous.
Okay, but this is actually perfectly... Sorry, I completely interrupted you.
No, go for it.
This is literally what discernment is. Is it's just going for it. And God... I think that's the biggest fear. I think this is what I want to hear your thoughts on. Because I think you're going to have some really, really solid insight for people.
Oh, no.
Especially in Catholic schools. I'm pointing at you, every Newman Guide school. It's scary because people are like... oh, if I say yes to go on our first date with him, the pressure, and things we're going to, and for guys, it's friend. If I ask her out, then she's going to expect us to be engaged in 3 weeks. And there's that kind of,
gosh.
Am I wrong though?
First
freshman
off,
fever is real. People start dating in college, especially Catholics, and they're like, you know what? We've been discerning we're engaged. And it's like, oh, how long have you known each other? 4 weeks. How long have you been dating? 3. What?
Yeah, it's a problem, I think.
How can people get out of that mindset? That was my question. How can people get out of the mindset of oh, he's going to ask me, or should it just be duh, if it's the kind of guy who thinks, oh, we're going to get married in a few months, don't date him.
I would run. Unless you've obviously been like friends for a
Vice
long
versa
time.
for girls.
If there's a certain friendship already established, but if you think after 6 months even of dating someone that you know them, you are gravely mistaken. And that's not a bad thing.
No.
I think that just in general that expectation is kind of developed. I don't know where I developed from, but I think it's an unfair expectation for both parties. You can't expect that person to really be able to commit after 6 months. And you, even after a year, I'd say it's pretty, I mean, for some people it works. For others, it's like you need to go through things, you know, both as individuals and as a couple before you're really ready to decide, hey, you know, this is the kind of person that I want to this is the kind of person I want to get me to heaven and who I want to get to heaven. Like, I think when you're dating, it's just very different. I think it's meant to be about companionship. It's meant to be about getting to know the person, getting to become comfortable with being kind of a part of a partnership. And so I don't think that it's fair to expect discernment to happen that quickly. Discernment obviously happens for everybody at different stages. Some people can meet and after 2 months can be like, you know what? This is my person. I feel like this is right.
This is my human.
This is my human. Ah, he touched my face.
Well, how can people create a better mindset then? Because I think it's kind of it's become a cultural thing of that's the mindset, especially in the Catholic world.
First, I'd say just be at peace that if it's meant to be, you'll know. And that dating isn't where the only discernment happens. Mm-hmm. Discernment also happens in engagement. I know a lot of people who've been engaged who have actually ended engagements because they discerned a little bit when they were dating and they felt, you know what, yeah, I think I want to do it. And then they got engaged and they did some more discernment and they were like, you know what, I just don't, it's just not right. And
that's good.
That's okay.
Awesome.
At least they did the discernment. God would much rather you do the discernment and be engaged and call off the marriage and call off the engagement than get engaged, get married, and then realize that it's going to be really hard and potentially put yourself in a really challenging marriage.
Yeah. There are a lot of marriages that should have been broken off, but they, at least in my opinion, there are a lot of Catholic marriages that have happened that should have been, and even non-Catholic marriages should have been broken off, but they didn't want to go through the struggle of telling people that they were no longer engaged and breaking it up, even if they thought they'd better. Granted, some of those people, they're in incredible relationships now, and they're in a really good place because they worked on it and they got to that place. But
and I mean,
just like you're saying,
any relationship is going to take work, even if you discern. Even if you discern and you're like, yes, this is the one I'm supposed to, this is the person I'm going to get to heaven. I trust that this person is going to work for the rest of our lives to get me to heaven.
Amen. That's
part of marriage is like, first off, it's hard. It's a choice. Like, it's not easy most days. Probably, I guess no, but at least from what I've heard from a lot of amazing Catholic couples who I've known my whole life, you know, they're honest about it. They're like, it's not easy every day. It's very rarely easy to love the other person, but there's a point where you trust that person. You go, you know what, that person at their core is working to get me to heaven and I'm working to get them to heaven. So if we're disagreeing, let's figure out why. And that makes it easier, I think, to work.
Yep.
At least it gives you the motivation to work on it, where I think a lot of people struggle to have that. And like you said earlier, like, discernment doesn't end. I don't think it's fair to say that, you know, discernment ends, because discernment is such a loose term. Everyone thinks discernment is just
big picture.
It is, and there are big discernments, there are little discernments. I mean, I think that a person has little discernments that they do their whole life. Obviously, there are big discernments. Marriage, kind of the career can fall into little discernment and big discernment. It depends. Yeah. You know, but I mean, God's calling you to things, and it changes throughout your life. You know, you might start in one job and you would change in 10 years. Yeah. And it's a completely different job. That doesn't mean that God put you in the wrong job or that you didn't follow God and you went to the wrong job. It just means that, you know what? Congratulations. You accomplished what you needed to in that one, and God's got something else he needs you to work on in this area, and that's okay. Yeah. And I don't think that there's enough respect for the fact that discernment is not just the big choices, and it doesn't just happen once. I think it happens every day. I think marriage, you discern it so often. And discernment isn't, are we deciding to stay married or are we getting a divorce? Discernment is,
how do we work on it? How do we make this as bad?
Discernment is how I think discernment is not what do I do? It's how do I do what God has created me to do.
That's really intense.
I think that
I like that a lot.
I think that should be the new definition that they teach in theology classes. I think discernment is the how do I do this, not the what do I do.
Because you know what you want to do is get to heaven. So the question is how do you do. Oh, that's so good.
Thank you.
I'm gonna have to put that in the.
I'm gonna toast myself.
I'm gonna have to. I'm literally gonna steal that for the devotion for our youth ministry night on discipleship or on discernment, not discipleship, discernment. Because I think that's at the heart of it. And I think at the end of the day, I think the saying that goes that I know you like, because you're an English nerd and you like really cool wording.
I do like English.
Where it says that like marriage isn't about cooperation, it's about collaboration.
Yes.
Where it's like you shouldn't have to compromise. It's not about compromise, it's about collaboration.
Yeah.
I think that's the same with God. It's not, okay, well, God, where am I supposed to go? It's like, all right, God, let's work together and figure out what you want me doing.
God wants you to know you.
And he wants you to be happy.
He wants you to be happy. He wants you... I don't know what's
the
passing.
Voice of the Lord. If no one can hear this and I can actually cut these noises out,
you're gonna
of
be
the
so
highway,
confused what we're hearing. But this like massive truck just came by.
If you're wondering why there's so many noises outside, a lot of things have opened up recently from lockdown around us, and we have the interstate that goes to LA right outside my house.
It's the interstate between LA and San Diego.
So
there's a lot of people there right now.
Now you know where I live.
Congratulations.
I'm sorry, I don't live here. This is our top secret studio.
This is not our top secret studio. But
I don't know what that. I'm so sorry.
Noise.
I've discerned that was a bad noise.
No, I love that. I need that as my ringtone.
A chipmunk being strangled.
Yes. No, I think that it's important that people. Also, I think because you said earlier, you basically gave like a breakdown of what discernment prayer can be or should be. I completely disagree with it. It
was just a method. It's not the method.
A method.
Yeah.
But I think that to do something structured works for some people. But you just got to figure out like what works for you, and God's going to communicate to you what works for you. Like I feel oftentimes that a lot of my experience with God comes through music. Mm-hmm. The way I listen to music, the stories I see kind of in my head when I'm creating a story. I find God in that, and I find God in the stories I write and the stories I read. And I think that that's a unique experience for me because he knows that that's how I communicate. That's how I feel. That's how I express myself. And so there are songs that I'll play when I'm really, really struggling with discernment or when I'm really struggling with just anything. And it's a song that I know I will at least feel God there. Yeah. And from there, I know that I'll figure it out. And I'll find out what the answer is. And sometimes, each time I listen to those songs, I get a different experience. Sometimes it's the same experience, which reassures me that I'm doing something right. But I've learned that that's my way. And I think everyone, whether it's journaling, whether it's music, whether it's going for a walk, whether it's a really structured prayer, whether it's reading the Bible, whether it's finding a new devotional. There are a million devotional books out there that I think are fantastic. And everyone
thinks, I need to pray a rosary every day to be discernment. It's like, well, then...
Well, that's great. Do that.
Fantastic. But then God, if that was the only way, why would God give us any other prayers?
There's not just one way. And I think...
There's a million different ways to discern.
I think it's okay to experiment with them.
Yeah.
I mean, I've experimented with different types of discernment for years before I kind of found what kind of worked for me. But I'll still try new things. I kind of grew up, I mostly just did the rosary. That was kind of my big, when I really want to sit down and just pray and focus myself, I would do a rosary. Now I've kind of started, because you really like Divine Mercy, I've started doing more Divine Mercy. I still do a rosary by myself, but when I'm doing it. But it's interesting because when you interact with people and when you experience new forms of prayer or new experiences of having a moment with God, that can come from anywhere. It doesn't always have to be Christian. I can find God in
a pile of leaves.
I could find God in my like Broadway music sometimes. Like I'm big into show tunes, and I could find him in that, you know, YA fantasy novel that I love.
That's a little bit harder, but
the point is that God will convey to you, even if it's not
in an explicitly Catholic way.
Yeah, exactly.
He will use anything.
I think that there's value in that, because in all actuality, God is a part of everything, whether it's because people are going against him, or people are with him, or people just don't know. You know, God is part of everything. And so I think that discernment is a part of everything. But I don't like that there's so much pressure on it. I think that's my only thing.
It should be very simple. It's, do you listen to God, and are you following? And I think this is I think the big picture point that a lot of people try to make, that just gets really confusing and like under a bunch of pile of other mumbo jumbo Thomas Aquinas said stuff. Is at the end of the day, God gave you desires for a reason, and as long as they are not sinful desires, it probably points to your discernment. Like you say, like you love music and you love writing and you love reading, and you've kind of discerned that one of your areas is somewhere in the area of writing or directing or stuff like that. And like I love media, I love that kind of stuff. So like this is something that I love to do, and that's something that I've discerned as far. And so like your desire could be to be an electric engineer and build bridges. That doesn't mean you're a bad Catholic because you're not doing something that's explicitly Catholic. And I think that's a problem that a lot of people today, it's just like, well, you're either gonna be a priest or you're gonna be married and have 1 million kids and live the faithful life. It's like, dude, you can do anything.
Just for record, I love kids. I think kids are great. I probably will not have 6 kids. I will
bad
not,
Catholic.
I mean, God will decide. As my mom says, God has a funny sense of humor. And I can say I only want 2 kids, and who knows? Who knows what it could be?
Then John and Kate plus 8.
Or, you know, like I could end up running like a foster home, or who knows?
You could have an orphanage in 5 years. You could be running an orphanage in Germany.
Ooh.
You never know. And I think that's the
I'd
thing.
have to learn German
God could point you to a direction that isn't explicitly Catholic. Like he could just be like, you are meant to be a normal human being working a 9-to-5 office job. Yeah. And that could be your life, and that could be where he wants you to be. And that doesn't mean you're worse than somebody who's like a Scott Hahn or a Mark Hart or, you know, a big Catholic personality. Your discernment could just be, you know what, God, I really like tractors, and you're a farmer now, and you can be a baller farmer living out your vocation. Ain't nothing wrong with that.
But your vocation, like to some extent, everything you do will be for God or influenced by your faith anyways. So it could be that you know, lead a small group. I love leading people. I love managing people. I love creating, you know, things. So, you know, maybe one day I'm managing and I'm coordinating big conferences and retreats and working with young people.
Or small conferences and retreats.
Or small conferences and retreats. And I'm working with a lot of people because I love working with people. And I know that that's one of my skills. And I desire so strongly to communicate with people in such an authentic way, and I know that that's a part of my discernment. I know that that comes from God. I know that there's nothing that God gave me, this natural love for communicating with people and for being with people. And you know, it could be becoming a, you know, big speaker. It could be just this podcast. It could be literally anything. And if you just kind of trust yourself, also learn about yourself, because discernment is all really at the end of the day about you and your relationship with God, and in marriage obviously with somebody else. But at the start of it, you need to know who you are. You can't discern if you don't know who you are. And it's not, people joke about it, but nowadays it is so not easy to know who you are.
No,
I mean, you have to, there could be so many things that are inflicting on it. You know, there's anxieties, there's depressions, there's any sort of mental health thing, there's just pressure from other people, there's social expectations, there's
financial issues. There's you could even just have a struggle to say, God, I don't really trust you as a father. And your father could be fantastic, but for some reason you can't trust God as a father. Like your story is as plentiful as the unique, the meters of smog in LA. Like you have a completely unique.
We do have a smog issue up there.
Story. It's actually better because of the shutdown. It's like super clear. I tried to go up there the other day and get pictures, and I almost got arrested. Don't ask. I think it's a beautiful thing that, just like you're saying, it's about you and God. but it's not scary. It shouldn't be this big thing. It's, look, God's going to direct your actions because at the very least, even if you never pray to him, he has put desires in your heart that you should go after. Now, do so with prudence. Do not immediately be like, oh, well, I'm 15. I'm going to drop out of high school and become a full-time Catholic YouTuber. Do not do that. We are not recommending it.
Please stay in school. My mom was a teacher. She will be very upset if I do not encourage people.
I don't want to be held liable if you drop. I don't want your parents emailing us.
I don't have a response to that email. I've gone through all of schooling. I highly recommend it. I think there's a lot of value in it. Please don't drop out of school.
And if you need motivation on feeling like, oh, well, God can't discern my path, flip open a saint book and flip to any page, dude.
Any page.
I'm serious.
Well, preferably the early ones. But
Saint Augustine, before he was a lawyer who had a kid out of wedlock.
He was a problem child. His poor mom.
His mom must have been so embarrassed. Saint Ignatius was the only way that God could get Saint Ignatius of Loyola to actually listen to him talking was to have a cannonball break both of his legs.
So
the saint.
We recommend listening so you don't get your legs broken.
So
God will go to extremes if you don't listen.
If you need to be placed on a path, and I think that's the last big point is, if you need to be placed on a path, God will make it known. I knew a guy who was engaged, and now he's a priest. Like, he was 3 days before his wedding, and he told his
fiance,
his now ex, because he's a priest, God is calling me to the priesthood, and she was not happy. But like
don't do that if
God really needs you to a certain vocation, he will make it very, very clear.
Oh, he will.
So don't worry, don't stress. It's gonna be okay.
And like, there's always people out there. We're always here. You can message us privately or through the RC Catholics on Instagram.
Get a spiritual director.
But seriously, like, I always tell my friends this. I'm always open to talk to anybody and everybody who needs just someone to talk to, because sometimes discernment, you just gotta talk through it, and it's weird for some people to talk to themselves. I talk to myself all the time, but
I'm aware.
Sometimes he hears me talking to myself, and it's gotta be the most weird thing.
She'll be like baking banana bread and be like, hum-de-dum, I'm a cat crawling over a tree, and I'm like, what? I
do like cats, but no, like, seriously, like, find people, and if you don't have people in your personal life, reach out.
Yeah.
People, we're always here.
Grow in virtue.
Find people who can help you, because discernment, the hardest thing about it is the possibility of doing it alone.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's your journey, but no one should have to walk through it alone. There should always be people who, they may not know you that well. They might not be your best friend, but they can hold your hand and go, all right, I'm right here. You got my strength. Let's go.
Yeah. At the very least, God has you.
At the very least, God has you.
Pray, hope, don't worry. I think, to sum it all up, if you were zoning off playing something instead of listening to us or watching.
That's fair.
If it's God's will, it will happen. If it isn't, it doesn't matter.
And just trust him and trust you. Yeah. You won't, if your intention is good, I don't think you'll make the wrong choice.
And don't get in your head about it. Because not everything about when you're dating
don't let the fear drive you.
That's a better way to put it.
If it feels, not just if it feels, but if there is intrinsically a part of you that just trusts that this is right, trust yourself. And trust God, because if it's not right, he'll let you know if you're listening. If you're blocking him out, there's nothing. He won't force it on you.
He'll break your legs. God will break your legs if you do not listen to him in discernment.
He might do that. For the most part, he won't force you. God will, at the end of the day, it's our choice. Discernment is you choosing whether or not to follow God, to trust in him, to trust in yourself, and to go where you'll be happy.
I think it's kind of fun. I'm not going to lie. I think discernment, once you get over the fact that, like, oh, it's kind of scary my whole life, it's like, dude, you have the entire world open to you. Follow your dreams. Follow where God is putting you. Follow your conscience. Follow your soul, dude. Listen to the rhythm of your heart. I can't remember how that song goes. All I can think of right now is a Total Eclipse of the Heart.
No.
Which is not a discernment song.
No, I'm kidding.
If there's any points in discernment that you want us to talk over, by the way, that you want a little bit more information on, or you want more of our thoughts on, if you're like, Connor, I want to know, Rachel, I want to know more about how to discern which convent to go to.
No, seriously.
Let us know.
Comment below on YouTube. If you're on Spotify, again, reach out to us. It kind of stinks that Spotify doesn't have like a, can I message this person?
I'm so glad.
Spotify
comment section would be absolute trash.
I would vibe with it. But
it would be Twitter. It would be worse than Twitter.
I don't know. I'm not on Twitter.
Good.
I have a Twitter. I'm just never on it. No, seriously. Message us. Message us on Instagram. The RC Catholics. Fine. Should I do that last sentence?
Nah, I think we're fine.
Okay, cool.
So thank you everybody so much for watching. If you have any questions, like we've said 4 times now, reach out. We love you. We're praying for your discernment. We hope it's good. Rachel, your last thoughts.
Just, you got this. Trust in yourself. Buy t-shirts. They're really cozy.
Wait, here, you put your hand out. Let's see if it gets in my thing. Yeah, hey, you're getting 4. You're now getting like 3 or 4 thumbs up from us. It's the same head twice. Now you're getting another 4 thumbs up.
Hey,
You've got this. God has you. We pray for you. And thank you everybody so much for watching.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for joining our crew. Feel free to subscribe and like. And as always, keep it real.
Yes, we got it on time.